Today, we're going to explore a pretty chilling thought experiment. It's one that suggests a single crisis, just one, could unravel the world as we know it. Now, this isn't about fortune-telling or anything like that. It's about taking a hard look at the hidden fragility of our interconnected systems.
So here's the core question, and it is a powerful one. It asks us to look past the day-to-day headlines of a single conflict and really consider a much darker possibility. What if what we're seeing isn't just a war, but the very first tremor of a much, much larger global earthquake?
And this is where the key idea comes in. You have to see the world not as a bunch of separate countries, but as this incredibly intricate web. A conflict in one little region isn't isolated, no way. It pulls on threads that are connected to everything, and to everyone else.
And you can see just how deep those connections really go. I mean, a crisis in the Middle East, that isn't just a local story. It immediately hits energy security, which then sends these huge ripples through the global markets. And all of a sudden, it becomes a chessboard for major powers like the US, Russia, and China, each one putting their own strategic interests on the line. A local fire is suddenly being fed by global fuel.
Okay, so you might be wondering, how could one single shock really lead to such a widespread collapse? Well, the theory suggests it's a cascading failure, kind of like a line of dominoes, where each one just tips over the next.
This whole potential unraveling seems to happen in three big stages. First, the political structures that we all just take for granted start to wobble. Then, these deep-seated powerful beliefs ignite. And finally, the conflict itself, it moves into this new, invisible dimension. So, let's take a look at that first domino, the fall of governments.
War is the ultimate stress test. It doesn't really create weakness out of thin air. No, what it does is it acts like this incredibly powerful light, and it exposes all the cracks that were already there, hiding just beneath the surface of society.
The thing is, a lot of modern nations are already walking on pretty thin ice. We're talking years of high debt, bitter political infighting, and this massive loss of faith in our institutions. All of it has made them incredibly fragile. So when a major crisis finally hits, there's just no shock absorber left. The system just kind of breaks. And this is absolutely crucial to understand. A government falling isn't always some big dramatic revolution you see in the movies. Sometimes it's just a quiet paralysis, a moment where leaders can issue all the commands they want, but nobody's listening anymore. Authority just drains away, leaving this hollowed-out structure behind.
So let's move on to that second domino, when a conflict gets wrapped up in sacred meaning. This is the point where a political dispute over a piece of land transforms into something way more dangerous, an existential fight for the very soul of a people. And this really gets to the heart of it. When a place is considered holy, an attack on it isn't just a policy disagreement. For believers, it feels like an assault on reality itself. The stakes jump from being political to being cosmic, and that makes any kind of compromise feel like a profound, unforgivable betrayal.
And because of global media, the internet, social media, all of it, the emotional shockwave from a sacred conflict travels at the speed of light. A bombing in a distant Holy Land can ignite protests, rage, and division in communities thousands of miles away. All of a sudden, a foreign war becomes a very local problem.
And that brings us to the third and final domino, invisible war. This is a conflict that isn't fought with soldiers and tanks, but with keyboards and algorithms. It's specifically designed to attack the nervous system of a society, often without a single shot ever being fired.
And the arsenal for this new kind of war is hiding in plain sight. We're talking cyber attacks that shut down power grids, disinformation campaigns that completely shatter public trust, mass surveillance that creates this climate of fear. These aren't weapons aimed at armies. They're aimed at the very fabric of our daily lives.
And that right there is the most chilling part. The actual infrastructure for this new kind of warfare, it's already in place. It's disguised as the convenient tech we use every single day. Our phones, our social media feeds, our payment systems, they can all become the battlefield before we even realize a war has started.
So if the battlefield itself is becoming invisible, if it's moving inside our own systems and even inside our own minds, well, that raises one final crucial question. How does a crisis of this scale change not just the world, but our own consciousness? A profound crisis like this really presents us with a choice. Is it a doorway to some kind of awakening? An event so big it just strips away our illusions and forces us to ask deeper questions? Or is it just a mirror, one that simply reflects back our darkest impulses, all the fear, the hatred, the collective shadow that we'd much rather ignore?
There's this really powerful idea from Carl Jung that suggests that the crises we face on the outside are often just the problems we refuse to deal with on the inside. A society that ignores its own darkness, its own shadow, will eventually have to confront it as an unavoidable external event that feels an awful lot like fate.
And so at the end of all this, we're left with this one question. And it's not to predict the future, but really to understand ourselves. If a global crisis holds up a mirror to all of humanity, and it strips away everything superficial, what's it going to show? What will it awaken? Not just out there in the world, but in each of us.